Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Futurum Tech Podcast. I'm Daniel Newman, your host, CEO of the Futurum Group. Excited for this interview series. We have a new guest today. We have Jamie Lerner, CEO of Quantum, joining the show first time. Very excited to have a conversation with Jamie. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome him into the show. Jamie, thanks for joining me today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, it's great to chat to you. I always know when someone understands the uniform of technology, fellow vest guy, that we are bound to be having a great conversation. But look, in the era of rapid digital transformation, the proliferation of data at scale, the business you're in is of critical importance, and people are looking, across all types of different storage, data management systems, and of course, all the compute and network required. So we're going to get into a lot of that with you today. Before we do that, though, I would love to just take a moment and quickly have you introduce yourself to the audience. Give us just a little bit of your background and how you landed as CEO at Quantum.
Yeah. I'm Jamie Lerner, and I've been the CEO of Quantum for the last 5 years. I've spent the majority of my career in infrastructure, whether it's networking infrastructure, data center monitoring, provisioning, but really all things data center infrastructure. And I've spent the last 5 years driving a transformation at Quantum from a group of enterprise storage products into an end-to-end portfolio completely focused in and around managing unstructured data.
And for anyone out there that's not familiar, unstructured data is the stuff that, it's not rows and tables and columns. And by the way, it's what we are all creating at exponential scale, like right now, like this.
Right now.
There's a whole bunch of unstructured data.
Right.
And in our lives and in our worlds, that's the way we will see AI scale at great, in great capacity for our utilization. It's when we can not just take those columns and tables and databases that everybody has done a pretty good job of figuring out how to manage, but then get all the rest of this data that we're continuously creating in the real world, at the edge, in the cloud, and of course on-prem. So let's talk all about that. If you followed my show at all, one of the things you'll know about me is that I do love talking about the macro environment. Spend a lot of time talking, to the Wall Street Journal and the CNBC and trying to make tying the threads together of technology and innovation and stuff that we do, but also in how it affects the world, the globe, the economy. I'd love to get your kind of broad takes, Jamie. Just what are you sort of seeing as the big macro trends in the market and the things that have really got you thinking about how you want to continue to build Quantum?
Yeah. When I came to Quantum 5 years ago, quite honestly, I didn't know what to do. We had a couple products, but I wanted to build a strategy that was very forward-looking, that I knew for us to be relevant as a company, we had to do something very bold, very ambitious, and something that was years ahead of the market. So to figure that out, I just immersed myself with our customers. And at the time, a lot of our customers were television and movie and sports production people. And I realized one thing very quickly, that companies have basically two buckets, if you will, of data. One, like you mentioned, structured, rows, columns, very mature tools for searching, querying, analyzing, graphing, very mature technology. But the other area of storage is actually much bigger, growing much faster, and much less defined. And that's just unstructured stuff. Now, in the movie world, a company like a Disney or a Warner Brothers has over like 100 years of video clips, sound, music, and to have several billion of these is not abnormal. And they were coming to us saying, this data is growing. It's very expensive to keep, but we can't throw it out. The enterprise companies can throw out their data. We can't. We're not going to throw out the original Mickey Mouse, videos, and films. We're not throwing it out ever, so we need to keep it forever. But we don't know how to manage it. It's hard to search. It's hard to know what's happening in the video. We need analytics tools. And what I started to learn is what was happening 5 and 10 years ago at movie and television companies is now what's happening at every company. Every company has video surveillance data, has imagery data, has log files, has growing bodies of unstructured data that they need to catalog, analyze. And now, like movie companies, almost every enterprise is saying, I'm not going to throw out anything either. And this really is what created what I think is the biggest trend right now is end-to-end unstructured data management, because the structured data never moves. It stays and lives its whole life in an Oracle database. Unstructured data, clips or videos are moving around. They may go to the cloud. They may go into an analytics system. They may be archived. So there's movement. They're kept forever. And most of the work we're now doing around AI and analytics is not pointed at structured data. It's pointed at support calls, voice, the spoken word, the written word, video, photography. That's where AI is focused. And nobody is going to be able to do AI properly without the infrastructure, which ends up being an end-to-end infrastructure for unstructured data.
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of things there. And in a world from a macro perspective that's in a challenged environment, right? We are in a challenged, high interest rates. You've got challenging inflation. Right. AI has sort of been this really interesting digital transformation and business accelerator that's almost offset. And what you're mentioning is something I want to come back to in a few minutes with you. But what you're mentioning is effectively this companies realizing efficiency and productivity that exists inside of their data is massive, but it's got to be all of their data. It can't be fragments of their data.
Well, I mean, I think you're hitting on something really important. Your AI will be no different than anyone's unless you've kept your data. The thing that makes one company's use of AI valuable, unique, and special is because that AI was built off of their very special data. So for example, if you're using AI to support your customers, if you have not kept 10, 20, 30 years of support history, of recorded calls, written calls, if you don't have that special thing and you're using generic internet data, yours is no different. So basically, the companies that have archived their unstructured data and kept it will have a distinct advantage of the people who've thrown theirs away.
Yeah.
And an archival strategy, and the companies that invested in archival are going to have much higher fidelity AI. And I think a lot of people are now saying, I need a strategy to store this, what is kind of an obscene amount of data, because of what we're going to be able to harvest from it in the future. I need to store it. I need to store it economically. And we've spent about 5 years working with the largest cloud companies to say, how do they store tens of exabytes of data very economically? And part of the end-to-end unstructured, part of it is very expensive, very fast storage, but part of it is very large, very inexpensive, 100-year archives. And you need to have both ends of that spectrum to really achieve end-to-end architecture.
Yeah, which is interesting too, is because you can have that kind of low cost tier, but it still has to be available, searchable, retrievable in a somewhat timely manner. Or at some point it gets to be, it's like filling up a big storage facility, right? And you can't get to the stuff in the back because it's, you need trucks and forklifts and dump trucks, and so that's the, the physical example of it. But the complexity right now is that most of us don't always know that data. And something else you kind of said, and I'm bouncing around a bit, but I think this is good. Let the conversation roll. With the whole advent of these large language models, we sort of thought that, these companies were going to get a huge advantage. But then what we immediately saw with ChatGPT and Llama and with Bard and all these others is that it actually just leveled the playing field for everybody. So when it comes to that widely available public data, every company's now on the same playing field. You can search it, you can scan it, you can have it create quick queries for you. But then immediately you saw, where did companies start to rise up? It's the rise of the foundational models, the rise of the
I have
micro.
my own special data that, when analyzed, will give results that you cannot get off the general internet. And that's what's so important.
Well, you have to.
The other thing that's happening is, when you keep your data and you have millions, hundreds of millions, billions of files, traditional storage systems have a major problem. Most of them store a file name. Now, if your file name is 1,000 hours of video surveillance, you don't know who's in that video, what's happening in that video. Did something happen? Was there a slip and fall? Did someone get injured? Was something stolen? When did that happen? Who did it? You don't know any of that. So what we've been doing is changing the concept of data services. Data services used to be compression and dedupe. Oh, great. But now the data services we're adding is analytic algorithms that say, okay, you have 1 billion files. Well, what are they? Are they X-ray images? Are they MRI images? Are they video surveillance? Are they log files? What are they? Then once we know what they are, okay, it's an X-ray image. Well, X-ray of what? Is it a man? Is it a woman? Is it a child? Is it a broken bone? Is it osteoporosis? Is it bone cancer? And we can begin to fill out a metadata library that says, you have a file. This file is an X-ray. It is of osteoporosis of a woman above 80 years old. And now you can say, not only do we have billions of files, but we know what they're of. So you can go, I want to analyze all osteoporosis patients that are under 50 years old in this demographic of the world. And you can begin to slice your data so that you give the AI engines the subset of data that's most relevant. But a storage system doesn't do that.
Nope.
And we started adding metadata. And the old way you did this, like the way sports teams do it, is they have loggers.
Yep.
Oh, it's a fastball, it's a curveball, they're typing in every play in the NFL and MLB.
It's like early ML store object recognition.
Right.
Most in there tagging it. It's a cat. It's a dog.
How would you do tagging, right? How do you do hand tagging on 1 billion files, on the entire archives of Disney or Showtime or HBO? It's impossible.
Solve all the gaps in labor. That just becomes.
Right.
I'm being.
It just doesn't work.
Hey,
so now that we've added this, our systems now automatically populate the metadata tagging. And that's why we've layered on a cataloging engine as part of our architecture, in that it doesn't just move files around, it knows what's in those files. And we've introduced this concept of data enrichment, that we don't just store your data, we actually begin to enrich it to say, yes, it's a file, but we're adding the metadata tags about it. It's got these actors in it, and this is what the actors are saying. And by the way, if you want us to translate what they're saying into Mandarin, we can do that. And if you want us to repixelate their mouth, that they're no longer speaking English, that they're speaking Mandarin, and we're repixelating their teeth and their facial expressions into that language, that becomes data enrichment that isn't outside the storage system, but it's in the very DNA of the architecture. And that's why, what we're doing is so different. And what's happening is that people are coming to us with these tremendous unstructured data problems and realizing that we've probably got the only architecture designed to handle these very large and complicated customers that have lots of unstructured data.
Yeah. So when you were talking about osteoporosis, I did want to know if you had a solution for the follicularly challenged that you could come up with. I still wonder to this day why they can't solve this for me. And anyway, I digress. I want to get into something a little bit more serious, though. One of the biggest challenges that the storage industry has, and quantum has not been able to escape this, and I think it's always great to address the challenges head on. And that's, we have kind of this old to new continuum, meaning that, there was a time when storage looked a certain way and storage companies did things a certain way and they were sort of seen as innovative. And then storage shifted and you mentioned the rise of the hyperscalers. and you talk about some, there's new entrants. And what you said earlier, you said, we're one of, or we're the only to kind of, and I agree. I have the benefit of talking to many of your peers, and I would say what you're talking about is not what they're talking about being able to do. There's a few, and honestly, the ones that are talking about aren't the ones you'd be thinking about. They're not storage companies. They're these new data companies. But
Right.
I want you to talk about that evolution, because you're sort of, quantum was narrowly seen as one thing. It had gone public, it went private, it's back public, and you've come back as a different, I think, cooler, more innovative company.
Right.
But
Yeah,
sometimes
we're a 45-year-old company.
it takes a while for people to see it.
Right.
Talk about that evolution and how you're kind of getting the world to appreciate that you are very different than that, tape or M&E company of the past.
Yeah, I mean, Quantum started its life in 1980 as a disk drive company. And then as the disk drive industry consolidated, it made a very difficult transformation from a component supplier. A disk drive is a component in a storage system, to becoming an enterprise provider, getting into backup systems, tape systems, disk-based systems, high-speed storage with our StoreNext product. And it made a transformation, from disk to tape into enterprise systems. And when I came, I felt it was time for another transformation, keeping some of our assets, removing some of our assets, but really transforming ourselves into an end-to-end company. And there's not a lot of companies that are 45 years old out of the Silicon Valley. And the ones that are still here have transformed their missions drastically over those years. And I think we've done a good job at keeping our linkages to our legacy. I think we're very trusted as a vendor. I think we've been around a long time. I think we have a lot of the same employees and a lot of the same customers back from the 80s. And, I have employees celebrate their 40th anniversary here all the time, and it's pretty amazing to watch. And we have customers that come in and say, we've been a customer for 30 to 40 years as well. And that legacy of trust is really important to me in the culture of our company. But that trust is based on that our customers know we're looking 5 and 10 years into the future and building the solutions for them. And while we have a lot of legacy in tape, we're not a tape vendor, right? If you look at our newest products, and almost everything we're doing at Quantum is all flash. Even our archive and backup products are all flash. Part of our end-to-end architecture is we're end-to-end all flash as well. So we're going all flash, but we're doing something that no one else and not many other all flash vendors do, is we're tiered flash. So while we're flash across everything we do, you can always tier to disk, to low-cost tape, to the cloud, to multiple cloud vendors, even tier to third-party vendors. So tiering has always been a part of what we do, but we know that a modern architecture is end-to-end all flash.
It sounds like you've made a ton of progress, and I was hearing bits of it in your last answer, but I'm going to ask you a little bit more directly, Jamie, is how do you sort of, tell your unique, we are different story? Like when you're sitting down and you've got those decision makers that are in this transformation moment, whether it's to come over as net new, or they're coming to you, Jamie, and saying, look, we've got a lot of options right now. There's a lot of storage file systems in the market. What are the kind of 3 things maybe, and you can do 4 too, this isn't a trick question, but what are the couple of things that you kind of say, here's the reason to come, or here's the reason to stay despite all the options?
Yeah, I think customers choose Quantum for 3 reasons. Architecture, experience, and trust. Now, our experience, we have more experience with unstructured data than anyone else. We have the longest legacy with television, movies, sports, and those were before enterprises got there. They were the largest custodians of unstructured data in the world. They just had the most video, the most photographs, the most sound clips. They just had the most unstructured data, while banks and the rest of the world really lived in the world of Oracle databases, structured data. Maybe if they played in unstructured, it was Word documents that I would still consider to be quite structured. But it was us with those big movie companies, also the big fashion companies with just billions of photographs, us working with NASA and space exploration, having um, archiving the largest repositories of photography in the world. We just built more experience with unstructured data for longer than just about anyone else. And now we've translated that into the enterprise with their log files, surveillance data, the kind of data that you're more likely to see: corporate video, training video, support cases. We've translated that in the enterprise. Secondly, because of that experience, we've built an architecture that just our peers don't have. It is an architecture for and built around this experience. And lastly, we've been trusted now for 40 years, whether it's with storing people's data on hard drives, on tape systems, on our extremely high-speed StoreNext system, and now into the future with our Myriad architecture. And I think it's those three things. It's our experience, our architecture, and our 45 years of trust is why customers go with us.
I won't date myself perfectly for the public, for all you people that want to steal my passwords, but I will tell you this: Quantum is older than I am. And that's pretty impressive. So we had just a couple of minutes left. I really enjoyed. I appreciate you kind of, staying with me. Told you I'd like to bounce around a bit, but what you're doing is really important, Jamie, and the ability to help companies sort of navigate into this era of unstructured data and do it at scale. And like I said, I love what you mentioned when you talked about, the complexities and stuff with metadata and tagging. Like, the ability to do these things rapidly without a significant human in the loop is going to be critical for companies to really get that competitive differentiated edge with all of their data. Now, you mentioned your new product. So this is going to be my one little moment here where I'm going to take you off the hot seat. I'm going to give you a little bit of a leading question, but talk about Myriad, because I read that announcement. I said, this is cool. And by the way, totally different than the Quantum that I thought about when I thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, Myriad is a very ambitious storage project. We set out to build the world's fastest combined file and object system, all flash, all NVMe over Fabric, but completely automated. That there are no nerd knobs and settings, that it sets itself up, it sets its network up, it sets its storage parameters up, it learns how you use it and evolves, but it is designed to just work. It just works. You don't have to configure it and administer it. It just works. But more than that, it just works anywhere. No hardware bindings. So the entire storage architecture is pressed into a container. And that container can run on the cloud. It can run on a Dell server. But if you're in China, it can run on a Huawei server. In India, it can run on a Made in India server. It has no hardware bindings. So it's built like the cloud. It's entirely built as a container. It scales, just add more containers and it scales. It balances itself. It spreads itself. You don't have to administer that. It comes with all the data services you'd expect. You don't have to set them up. It does compression. It does dedupe. It will replicate to other places, other vendors if you'd like. It has metadata tagging that we discussed in its very DNA. So the data is all tagged as it's operating, and you can do custom tags, AI-based tagging. It's very, very simple to administrate, but runs at incredible speeds. And it doesn't have custom administration. You administer it the way you administer anything in the cloud, just as a container. So it uses Kubernetes failover, Kubernetes installs, all the ways that you would use Kubernetes to manage a data workload. Our workload's no different. So it's a completely modern way of building a storage system. And everyone who's seen it and has used it, and now we're in pretty late stage trials, is pretty blown away by what its potential is. And we'll be moving from late stage trials into our first commercial deployments this fall. It's actually pretty much happening in real time. And it's a pretty exciting time, but it's fully part of most of our competitors build a product, like this. We build a product like that. So this product tiers. It talks to our other products. It moves data up and down the unstructured continuum from this being our most high-speed platform, but it's completely connected to a data lake. Whether that lake is on the cloud, whether it's on very low-cost storage, nearline storage, it will move data from these lower-cost archival areas up into the high-speed area, and that's all built into its very DNA. So it's a very different approach to building this kind of product. It's based on 25 years of experience working with the biggest custodians of unstructured data. And the result is, it's early days, but right now it's one of the more awesome things I've seen in my years of building infrastructure. And what's so cool about it, as infrastructure, there is no infrastructure. There's no hardware. It is just containers, completely unbound. It's the first time as an infrastructure builder, I built something that is anti-infrastructure. And it's pretty cool to see it be deployed.
Well, that's where the world is heading, right? Infrastructure increasingly, except for your most specific use cases, is getting more and more commoditized. Of course, I'm not talking about big NVIDIA GPUs, people understand, but at some point it'll do the same thing. That's what happens to hardware. Jamie, I could talk for a long time about this. Let me tell you, I'm excited to see more, hear more. I'm the type of person that loves to look at the way your customers are going to implement and employ the Myriad solution. I look forward to reading about those and having you back and when you start to get this out in the market at scale.
Yeah.
But congratulations on the progress you've made. No doubt it's a tough industry. It's a very, very competitive space, and continuing to innovate, differentiate, and being able to drive up margins. And then, of course, trying to do all of that while appeasing your shareholders
Right.
makes for a lot of long nights, and hopefully also, gives you the inspiration to keep driving Quantum's future success. Jamie, thanks so much for joining the Futurum Tech Podcast.
Yeah, Daniel, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right, everybody, hit that subscribe button. Join us for all the great episodes here on the Futurum Tech Podcast and the interview series. We talk to many executives, from CEOs like Jamie Lerner here to top product and technologists at these companies. And it's a lot of fun. You'll enjoy it, but you can't catch the episodes if you're not subscribed and you're not tuning in. So we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye for now.